I don't know that they're unique. They are like too many public executives. They're overly concerned with short-term considerations like quarterly profit statement or growth. They are probably more scared than most business people because the media, because the internet and digital world is changing so fast. So there's this palpable sense of fear that you gather from them, particularly if you have the luxury of time to get to know them on a story.
A fear of what exactly?
Of change. Fear of what's happening to my business and how do I shore it up? How do I protect my existing business while moving into the new digital world without disrupting mine?
Of course, your newest book, Googled, examines this world very closely. So is Google good or bad for the media world and consumers?
Well, it's good for consumers. Certainly in the short run, it's good for consumers. I mean, I have a library at my fingertips because of Google. I can find information. If you live in a third world country, you can, and you can't afford a textbook, you can use Google. The internet made the world information available. What Google does is make it accessible, and that's a profound change. So for the consumer, it's great. But for newspapers, it commoditizes information in newspapers. For television, if someone can use YouTube, which Google owns, it certainly diverts your attention from television. If you're watching Google, you're not watching NBC. So it certainly harms media in the short run. In the long run for consumers, the question is if in fact newspapers are weakened so much that many of them shrivel and die, or can't afford to do the kind of investigative reporting a democracy needs because people gather information in commoditized form from search engines like Google and others, then democracy and the consumer is hurt in the long run.
But would the media executives learn eventually how to embrace Google and exploit it if they can, or are they just dead in the water?
No, I don't know that they're dead in the water. I think there's a profound change that's taking place that is worth dwelling on, which is that the traditional media world, led by people like Rupert Murdoch, who are saying, we're going to start charging for our content on the web. Google search, maybe, start paying so we don't become a commodity. Maybe we're going to have a paywall like he has at the Wall Street Journal, where you have to read the Wall Street Journal online. You've got to be a
News Corp
subscriber.
properties, which I belong to. Now,
Yeah.
now we're all clear. Okay.
But the Times announced, the New York Times announced they're going to go to a paywall. The Financial Times has a paywall. Others have. Some have done it, like Newsday, and it's been a colossal failure. But the traditional media world is saying we have to get on the web, on that platform, and we have to figure out a way to monetize it, meaning charge for it and no longer make it free. At the same time that the traditional media world is moving towards that position, the Googles of this world are moving closer to that position, because what is Google doing? They're beginning to charge on YouTube. Why? Because they realize that the advertiser doesn't want to put their friendly ads in an unpredictable user-generated content environment. So they made a deal with independent movies to start charging. I think within next year you're going to see on YouTube making a deal with Hollywood studios and networks to begin charging for their content, because that's a way of not only paying some revenue to traditional media companies, but also a way for YouTube, which is losing money, to potentially make money.
All right, so you're not a analytic journalist, you're a analytic consultant. You get a phone call from Time Warner, the New York Times, Viacom, News Corp. Ken, help us. You're the expert now. What should we do about Google? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that I mean, there are two types of people I found in this world. My book basically looks at not just Google, but the traditional media world and how they've reacted to the Googles of this world. What I found is that a lot of the traditional media types, instead of leaning forward and being proactive and saying, what can I do to get ahead of this wave and not crash into it, they lean back and they moan, oh, the internet is terrible, oh, Google is terrible. And they weren't proactive. And so what I would do is I would be proactive. I mean, first thing I would do is I would hire and put up my elbow an engineer. This is a world where the engineer is your content creator. They're the person who figures out how to interact with this digital world. And I mean, I sat at Google where half the employees are are engineers, and I watched them over 2.5 years. And those engineers are creating things. Google News, created by engineers. Google Maps, created by engineers. I mean, things that occupy our time and attention, created by engineers there. YouTube, created by engineers. So I think I would have, not buried in the bowels of my organization, but at my elbow, an engineer. Second, as CEO Bob Iger, who's the head of Disney, said something I thought was really smart. He said, I spend an hour a day surfing the web, just looking for things, just acclimating myself to this new world. Many of the media people I've met don't do that. In fact, some of them don't even use email. You know, they have a secretary print it out so they can read it. And that's insane. They should be conversant with that world. Among other things, they have to be able to talk to the engineer. I'm suggesting they put it at their elbow. And third, to your larger question, should you make deals with Google? You bet. I mean, I would just figure out, and I think Google has an incentive, because they're trying to figure out how do they monetize traditional media like YouTube. And so they have the same incentive you do. Now, it would be like arms negotiation. I would try and insist that you verify everything. I mean, I don't think you turn your business over to Google. Because, you know, Google are not, what I found is they're not cold businessmen the way Microsoft was. And when I wrote a book about Microsoft 10 years ago, Microsoft was out to kill Netscape and Apple and some of these other companies. Google guys are not out to kill traditional media, but they're cold engineers, not cold businessmen. And cold engineers look for efficiencies. And the way traditional media operates, if you think about it, printing plants, knocking down trees, trucks that belch, you know, pollution into the air and take a long time to distribute newspapers, books, how expensive printing and all that, and distribution and warehousing is. That's very inefficient. So Google engineers are always going to come up with ways to do things more efficiently.